The carriage is this whole assembly here on which the cutting tools ultimately rest, and it can be moved back and forth along the ways by means of this hand wheel. Incidentally, these hand wheels typically as they come from the factory are pretty stiff, but after you use them for a while and they wear in, they'll become much smoother. Usually after 6 months to a year of use, depending on how frequently you use the lathe, everything gets much smoother. And that's kind of a nice feature of a lathe, is it actually gets better over time. Same thing with these hand wheels here. These are pretty smooth. I've done a little work to adjust them and get them to the point where I like them. But as time goes on, they'll get smoother and smoother until eventually they are really literally silky smooth. So these are pretty good. These are the standard hand wheels that come on the lathe, and they work fine, but I personally have usually removed these and made some custom hand wheels in the shop that I like better, that have roller handles on them. But these, you can grip them here with your fingertips or however you find comfortable, and you can grip them out here on the point and get a kind of a faster turning radius if you're cranking it in and out of ways. So this is the cross slide. If you're not real familiar with lathes, this moves the cutting tool in and out perpendicular to the workpiece here, and it's used for cutting on the end or increasing the depth of a cut into the workpiece. On top here we have what's called the compound, or the compound slide, or the compound rest sometimes. And it's compound, I guess because it's a compound angle, you can cut a compound angle. This whole assembly here can be rotated. You can see there's a protractor scale along here that shows the angle in degrees. On the side of the cross slide, you can see that there are 3 adjusting screws here. These are referred to as the Gibbs screws, and there's 3 set screws with associated locking nuts. And what these are used for is they apply pressure to a metal strip that runs inside of the dovetail. I'll show you that in just a minute. And by adjusting this pressure to getting it just to the point where it's starting to create some drag, it minimizes any play in the cross slide and gives you a smooth and even movement with a minimal amount of play. So it's important that you keep these adjusted as the lathe wears in, particularly in the first year or so. You may need to adjust these every couple of weeks or couple of months to make sure that it's optimally tightened. After the lathe is a year or two old, they tend to get pretty well broken in and need to be adjusted less frequently. But if you use the lathe a lot and do a lot of heavy work on it, you need to keep an eye on those, make sure you have a minimal amount of play at all times. Looking down at the front of the cross slide, you may just be able to barely see the Gibbs strip, which is inserted here between the 2 parts of the dovetail, and that's what you're adjusting. It's a long metal strip with sort of a diamond-shaped cross-section. You can see there's a sort of a diamond-shaped gap there between the 2 parts of the dovetail, and that metal strip has the same cross-sectional shape. It fits in there and takes up that gap, and so you keep that adjusted to give you the best possible smoothness and fit with a minimal amount of play. So that's an important feature. It's really nice that you can make that adjustment, because these lathes will literally last a lifetime. The compound is also sometimes called the compound slide or the compound rest, but it moves at an angle to the workpiece, and the angle is determined by rotating the compound. Now this is one of my least favorite features of the mini lathe, because to get to the adjusting screws to change the angle, you have to crank the compound slide all the way back here, and it's kind of a slow and tedious process, and particularly if your Gibbs screws aren't adjusted, the compound can wobble around and make this even more difficult. And then you may also have to move the tool post around to gain access to these screws, but when you reach the end of the screw on the compound, you can see that underneath here there are some socket head cap screws, and they are adjusted using a 5mm wrench, and I like to use this type of T-handled wrench. You can get these at Harbor Freight very inexpensively, and they're very handy for this and other adjustments on the mini lathe. But you loosen these cap screws here, and then you can rotate the compound around to set it to whatever angle you want. If we swing the compound around this way and wanted to cut with an inward motion of the compound slide, you can see that the back end of the compound here is going to get in the way of the edge of the electronics cabinet. So most often, at least when I'm doing the work, I like to swing the compound around the opposite direction and cut coming this direction. Now that's awkward too, because now the handle's back here and the tailstock can be in the way, particularly if you have a 7x12 or a 7x10 lathe. You know, the tailstock chuck would be up here somewhere, so you probably would have to move the tailstock off of the end in order to have enough room to do the job. Alright, I'm set up now to take my beveled cut, and I've got the cross slide cranked back to give me a little more working room here, and I have the compound adjusted so that it's pretty far up on the dovetail slide. You don't want it too far back or it'll wobble and not give you a good cut. And I have the carriage locked down with the half nut lever to the lead screw down here. You can't see it, but anyway, that's just to keep the carriage from sliding back during the operation. So we'll bring this up to around 700 or 800 RPM, and I'm using the compound feed to make the cut. Taking too deep a cut there, I guess. There we go, back that off a little bit. Let me zoom in a little bit, see if I can get a better angle on that. So you make multiple passes until you get it to the depth that you want, or the thickness of the bevel. The width of the bevel, I guess I should say. And that's basically it. Alright. So that's a good example of using the compound. So I've moved the camera around here to give you a better view of that. And I did not do a facing cut on the end. Ordinarily, if you were going to do a bevel like this, you would first do a facing cut on the end of the workpiece. But if I were to continue making this cut, I could bring it all the way down until I had a point on the end. And that's a good way to make a useful tool, which I'll show you in a minute. Now I've put a different workpiece in here just to illustrate, but this is actually a piece of 7/16 inch diameter drill rod known as silver steel in the UK. But it's a steel alloy, and it's got a nice factory finish on it. But all I've done here is made a little pointer, and it turns out this is a real handy tool to use in the tailstock. When you want to align certain things in the chuck, you can use this point from the tailstock to help you get things lined up, for example, when using a 4-jaw chuck. So that's an example of a real simple tool you can make using the compound to cut that bevel on there. I also use these, by the way, for punching in holes in drywall when I'm painting. If you have nail holes that you want to patch, you just take the tip of this and punch it in, and it makes an indentation so that the sheetrock mud will make a nice smooth fill over the hole. Handy tip, free tip for you. Take a closer look at the cross feed here. I'm going to zoom in. You can see the scale here, the calibrations on it, and it move this handle a little bit. The calibrations are very nice. They're laser etched, I believe, and they're nice, sharp, high contrast, very easy to read, and very easy to set to within a fraction of a thousandth of an inch. But the ultimate accuracy of the lathe depends on many, many factors. You can pretty much count on getting accuracies of a thousandth of an inch if you do careful work and you understand all the things that go into that. 2 or 3 thousandths is certainly not a big issue with this lathe. You can get that that close. And if you're working in metric units, that would be, you know, on the order of 1/10 of a millimeter or better. With very careful work and some fine tuning of the machine, you can get down to accuracies of better than 1/1000th of an inch. But that takes some skill and understanding of the various dynamics of the material and the cutting tools and everything else. One thing you need to be aware of on the mini lathe, or at least on most mini lathes, is that the lead screws on the cross slide and on the compound are actually metric pitch. Each turn of the handle actually advances the cross slide by exactly 1 millimeter. Now if you look on the markings here, it says that one division is 0.025 millimeters, and one turn of the dial is 40 divisions, which is exactly 1 millimeter. And it also indicates that one division is 0.001 inches, or 1/1000th of an inch, which is almost true but not quite. 0.025 millimeters is very, very close to 1/1000th of an inch, but it's not exactly. And let's take a look at that. I've made this little card up here, and so one division is exactly 0.025 millimeters. But if you do the math, you'll find out that that's not exactly 1/1000th of an inch. It's actually 0.000984. So there's a very small error out here. And it's negligible if you're only moving by 4 or 5 or perhaps 10 divisions of the dial. But if you're moving 200 divisions of the dial, those little errors start to add up and can become significant. So for example, one full turn of the hand wheel is exactly 1 millimeter, and you might think that it would be 40 thousandths, but it's actually only 39.4 thousandths. So with each turn of the dial, if we're working in inch units, we actually end up 0.6 or 6/10,000ths of an inch short of our goal. Now, if you make 10 full turns of the dial, the cross slide advances 10 millimeters, but instead of advancing 0.400 inches, it advances only 0.394 inches. Let's take a look at that in action. So I've zeroed the cross slide dial here, and I've set up a dial indicator up above. Let me just get that zeroed. And okay, I've got the dial indicator zeroed, and I've got the cross feed dial zeroed. I'm now going to advance one full turn and come back around to 0, and you can see it's maybe just a hair short of 40, and we'll come around another full turn, should be at 80, and you can see it's just shy there, and another full turn bring us to 120, and it looks like we're a little over 1,000 short, and another turn should bring us to 160, and another turn to 200. You can see by the time we're at 200, we're about 2,500 short. Now there may be a little bit of error in the dial indicator or the way I have it set up here, but I think you can see the general trend is that with each turn of the cross feed dial, we fall a little bit short of our expected measurement if these were truly 1/1000th of an inch divisions.